travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place, whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
This personal finance feature is brought to you by Indway Risk Services, because the right insurance starts with a conversation. It starts with hello, Indway. Well, personal finance tonight, the weapons of wealth destruction. Warren Ingram, as you know, co-founder of Galileo Capital and certified financial planner, joining us now. Warren, good evening. I suppose in a way we're talking, you spend so much time telling us what makes us money, and yes, diversification. But what you're talking about is the things that cost us money, the mistakes we make along the way.
If you bring up diversification again, Stephen, I tell you, I'm going to start talking about journeys.
Or resilience.
Or resilience. So let's reach out and grab this dripping roast. I think when we talk about money and we look at the big mistakes that people make, I think the mistakes that draw our attention would be those really catastrophic, really poor decisions, often launched globally when people have invested a lot of money, for example, in an Enron or a Steinhoff or something like that. They're really attention grabbing. And we would spend time and effort on them and try and learn from those mistakes and educate ourselves to avoid them. Unfortunately, those aren't the mistakes that cost most of us our ability to generate enough money to get to financial freedom. In this instance, I think the mistakes are almost a death by 1,000 cuts. It's little incremental mistakes we make day after day, week after week, month after month. And at some point, we get to mid-career or midlife, and we look around and we start to ask ourselves, where's all the money gone? And where are my investments? And what have I done? And I didn't do anything major wrong, but I'm going nowhere from a financial perspective. I feel like I'm treading water. And to me, those are the big weapons of wealth destruction we need to learn to avoid. It's a bit like those little drones that are getting used by the Ukraine. They can be very effective at causing harm when you use lots of little bad decisions day after day. And those are the things we're talking about tonight.
Okay. There's some obvious ones, and I presume the first obvious one is around buying new cars. Now, I noticed the wording. It's not about buying cars, it's new cars.
Yes, and I almost want to say it can't be obvious because we as South Africans buy so many new cars every year. We do it relentlessly, and so to me, I think just understanding that there are a couple of decisions that we're making around that. One, we're buying. Just to understand, a new car loses somewhere around 10-15% of its value when you drive it off the shop floor. So for context, you buy a R1 million car, which it sounds like an enormous amount of money, but again, we sell lots of these in South Africa, and as you drive it off the floor, it's worth 850,000 rand, and it's not even traveled a kilometer. And it takes a long time for most people to save up and build up investments of 150,000 rand. And then to top it off, we don't really buy those cars cash. What we do is we borrow money. Sometimes we borrow at prime plus 2 or 3 or 4% to buy cars brand new, and we drive them off the floor. And then we're told that we have to have plans. We can't keep this car for 10 years because they need to be looked after and serviced, etc. And so we're kind of encouraged to rotate our ownership of those vehicles from somewhere around every 3 to every 5 years. And so we make our problem much, much worse. We compound that problem because we now have financed that car for 5 years and potentially we've paid down some of it, but then we trade it in and to be very honest, it's a very good, very usable car that could be probably driven for 10 or 15 years, but we trade it in and then we repeat the mistake again. But now the car's not worth R1 million, it's probably worth 1.3. And so, suddenly we're losing 200,000 as we drive it off the floor. And to me, it's something. I guess I'm challenging the word obvious, because if it was obvious, why do we keep doing it? And we do it en masse all the time, year after year.
I mean, it is something you notice. I notice the car market has changed slightly, and there's no longer sort of just sort of smart, what I would call executive cars, but there's also SUVs and things. But the moment you have a family, you start to think you need to spend money on those, and the same lesson would still apply. There's another issue that can happen, and it's so tempting, is that you're told you're going to get a bonus, or you're told you're going to get this, or you kind of anticipate a promotion, you expect that this is going to happen, and so the money's not quite in your account yet, but you're kind of very tempted to spend it.
We do it a lot. We would say, it's the start of the year, and it's been a tough kind of kickoff to the year. I deserve a holiday, and not judging, you probably do. But the point is, you should pay for that holiday with cash. If you pay for that holiday on your credit card, so you fly now, pay later, it might be a very kind of nice, fulfilling thing to do right now, but you're spending money you don't have, and it could be a bonus that you get paid that you're anticipating, and then the question is, companies, especially big companies, very often change their mind. If they haven't contractually agreed to a bonus and it's written down, if they're just giving an indication, unfortunately, they could change their mind. Circumstances could change. They could be a big export business to America, and suddenly they can't export anymore, and you don't get your bonus. Or you could be, just earning a salary and saying to yourself, well, I've got a job and I know I can pay off this debt over the next 6 months, which might be true until perhaps you don't have a job because your company shuts down or you get retrenched. So we do this quite a bit as well, where we spend money we simply don't have. And we in fact, what we're doing is we're borrowing it from the bank, and very often on our credit card at 25% interest, or 24% now that interest rates have come down, and then we're paying it off. But you lose your job, or you don't get the bonus, and you can't pay it off, and suddenly that money is growing against you at a rate of it doubles almost every 3 years if you're paying it off at 24% a year. So this can be an enormous mistake, in a very short period of time, especially if you do this regularly.
I mean, there's a lot that you need to be very careful of. I mean, it's really about, and this sort of takes us to another point in a way, short-term debt. So it's very easy to have short-term debt. There are often things that you want to buy. There are often things that you're very interested in. How seriously do you need to be careful of that?
Well, let's stay on the point of paying off your credit card debt at 24% a year. And if you do a quick, calculation on Google or on an AI engine, and you ask it, what happens if I've got 100,000 rands worth of credit card debt and I don't pay it off, within a 3-year period, it goes to 200,000. And so the thing about credit cards is, I was speaking to someone over the weekend who said, I haven't even seen my credit card. I haven't pulled it out of my wallet for a very long period of time because it's so easy on my phone now. I just tap wherever I go and it's all done. Or I just do the online shopping. And so it's become incredibly easy to spend money, and much more difficult to keep track of actually what we're doing with that money. And so, short-term debt, when we're borrowing money from the bank to buy things like clothes, shoes, whatever it is, accessories, those things have no value. If you try and sell it the next day, you're going to get very little money for that. And so if you're borrowing money to buy things that have no value, you might be doing small amounts. You might be doing small transactions, and you think, well, that's really not such an expensive item. It's only 2,000 rand, and I'll just service my minimum on my credit card. It's not really a problem. Well, congratulations, you've got the item. It's got no value. You can't sell it again. And if you're servicing the minimum, the likelihood is that 2,000 rand item is going to cost you 4,000 or 5,000. And if you're doing it regularly in very small amounts, it doesn't take long before you're at the point where you owe hundreds of thousands of rands on a credit card. And you made no one big mistake. You just did little bits here and there, month after month, year after year, and you've got nothing to show for it. You've got no assets to realize where you can sell them. They haven't grown, faster than the inflation rate. So you've gone backwards in effect by doing those small little behaviors every single day.
I think there's a thing, and I understand this. I mean, we all feel that we work hard, and that's because, generally speaking, we do. We work very hard. If we're lucky enough to have a job, we're working, sometimes it feels all the hours in the day. Certainly by the end of the week, you're exhausted, you want to relax, you want to maybe go out with friends, things like that, and you want to live a certain lifestyle. And the aspiration of that is fueled by all sorts of things, advertising, what people around us are doing, all of that. And I think we feel that we deserve this. Does that get us into trouble?
I often do talks to companies, especially their youngsters when they're starting out and the new professionals, the newly minted professionals. Let's not name the careers because this isn't naming and shaming, but I'll walk around their parking lot, for example, in their parking garage, and I'll see all these enormous cars that are being driven by the senior people. And then talking to the juniors, immediately that's the aspiration they have, is we've arrived because we've got a qualification, we're starting our first job, we studied for 5 or whatever it is, 6 or 7 years, we've got postgraduate degrees, and we've got some letters after our name now, and we need to show the world that we have arrived. And the examples that they are given are their peers, but more importantly, the older people in the business that have been around longer. And so they tend to spend as if they have already arrived, as if they're already earning those big salaries because they feel they deserve it. And it's not just to the professionals, to be fair. A lot of the time we feel if we've been working for 3 or 5 years in an early stage in our careers that we're no longer juniors, we need to move up and step up and show up and all of those things. And so we adjust our lifestyle to what we expect it to be, what we think it should be. Unfortunately, money doesn't work like that. What arrives in your bank account after all the deductions is the lifestyle that you can afford to live, and wishing it to be different, unfortunately, is not going to make it different. If you want a different lifestyle, you need to earn more money, and it sounds really simple, but we do this in really little small amounts. We don't do this as one big step where we go from living in a 10,000 Rand a month rental apartment to living in a 10 million Rand house. We step up gradually. Every year we do something where we spend a bit more because we feel we should. And if you're earning a lot more and you spend a bit more, well, that's the way to go. Well done. That's living within your means. But unfortunately, our income almost never rises as fast as we think it should. And then spending according to what we think as opposed to what we have is a classic mistake that a lot of people make. And if I'm sounding clever, Stephen, as if I've never done this, these are the hard lessons of life that I'm sharing, and many of them my own, but also watching everyone else's as well. So if you're listening, I empathize. I've been there. But the point is, the people that achieve financial freedom, they are good at not making this mistake. They are good at living within their means and finding ways to save. And that's the trick here. Is you need to take control to get to the point where you can live the lifestyle you want, which is matched by what you can afford.
There's so much to it, and so many sort of scars from it, to school fees and things, and they're very expensive. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. We're speaking to Warren Ingram. Your questions for our personal finance guru this evening. We do have a question from Joseph. Joseph is asking, Warren, I want to buy shares myself. What is the best way to do that? We'll have Warren's answer for you in a moment.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
And time for an answer to Joseph's question. Joseph's asking, Warren, I want to buy shares myself. What is the best way to do that? And I imagine, Warren, there are quite a few ways to do that.
The choices available now are quite wide. And so, for Joseph, I would say there are a couple of things. One, there are quite a few good online platforms that allow you to buy shares or even fractions of shares. And that means that you could buy shares with as little as 50 Rand or 100 Rand at a time. And a lot of the banks offer platforms via your banking app where you can buy shares direct on your app. And so it does become quite easy for us to buy individual shares. And I think the things to focus on will be costs. And understanding what you're going to pay before you kickstart is really important. So the two sets of costs to be aware of. The one will be if they're charging you, and most platforms will charge you a transaction fee. So you just need to understand how much are you going to pay to buy the share that you want to buy. And that's not just the price of the share, but it's the transaction charges as well. So if the share costs 50 Rand a share, how much, and usually you can see it on the platform before you start. They'll give you some kind of a quote to say the transaction will be 50 Rand plus another 12 Rand, for example, in transaction charges. So just understand what those transaction charges are, and then also be aware that it's not a once-off cost, because you will pay that same cost again or possibly more when you decide to sell your shares again. So when you're buying shares, your transaction fees, you need to be very careful of them, and understand that when you trade in small amounts, the transaction fees might be a fixed Rand amount. So in other words, they might say, we're going to charge you 100 Rand for every transaction. And if you're trading, 500 Rand, then a transaction fee of $100 is 20%. Don't be confused by the small Rand amount. Make sure you understand the percentage charge. And you don't want to pay 20% as a transaction charge, because you would be thrilled to get growth on your shares of around 20% over a 1 or 2 or 3 year period. And so all of your growth could be eaten up by costs. So understand that as your first cost. And then your second cost will be any annual fees that you'll be charged. So do they charge you a monthly account fee? And is it a Rand amount or a percentage? So I think online is best, and doing it via a platform, either through your bank or a well-reputed online platform, makes a lot of sense to me. Do your homework, look at all the reviews, and then do your homework on what to buy. Don't trade on what everyone else is telling you to buy. Do your homework. Make sure you understand why you're buying the company that you want to buy, and you can't just buy it because it's going up in price. You have to buy it because you believe it's got some kind of compelling reason that it's going to appreciate in value over a 5 or 10 year period. So buy what you know, buy what you understand, and then give it a go and do the homework and be patient.
Is it a good idea to trade shares yourself when there are lots of professionals out there who are supposedly better than us, and lots of index funds which over time might well have a good track record?
I think you're right about the index funds. I think that they offer a really compelling advantage for a lot of us as private investors, where we can simply buy the market and enjoy the growth of the market. And very few professionals, it works out to sort of 2 or 3 out of 10 are able to beat the index over a long period of time. However, what we have as an advantage as private investors is time. And so if you've got a particular insight, let's say you're a phenomenal computer game programmer, and you understand that there is a company making games that's way better than everybody else, and you've got deep inside knowledge about the way games work and where the industry is going, then buying shares in something that you know well could be the advantage that you have over everybody else. But if you're a computer techie and you're buying platinum shares because you read a headline yesterday, well, I'm sorry to say that's a terrible reason to buy shares. So it is about making sure you've got deep knowledge in a specific area and using that knowledge to your advantage, and then being really patient, because sometimes the market is wrong even though you're right. So the price might go down for a while because people are worried about Trump or tariffs or trade barriers or whatever it is. But if you're patient, perhaps that thesis that you had about why the share will do well, perhaps that unfolds over a bit of a longer period of time. And so you can be patient because it's your money and your objectives and your knowledge.
Warren Ingram, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Personal finance, of course, this evening with Warren Ingram.